how is the conference going so far? Good? This is a different panel. We should thank Tush and the team. I think they did a great job. Come on. I'm going to invite very smart people who's going to help me to speak about how the race is going to benefit us, if it's going to break something, if it's going to create compliance issues. All right. So I told you it's a different panel. And look, let's start with the core tension. Can we innovate with AI at the light speed and still follow the rules? Or is it going to be always a trade-off?
So I would say no. If you have a business process and it's broken, the only thing IT, as we all know in here, is going to do is extenuate that problem even more. So I would say if you have a very good process for AI and you have a way to bring your data in and keep it trained, then you're going to be able to leverage AI in a security workspace. But when I go and look at our SOC team, NOC team, any of them, and I want to build basically a lakehouse that stores every type of tests that we've ever done, whether it be pen tests, whether we've had any type of intrusions, all the tickets are closed, how they're closed, why they're closed, what it was impacting, and I want to be able to curate that data and then leverage that data to build models where we can make better decisions on. But I think most organizations, even in this space, are not truly prepared for AI at this point.
I also think to that point, as you mentioned earlier, we are in that race against time, right? It is those, there is that preference towards those American dominant companies. That's what we're seeing. That's why NVIDIA is doing what it's doing right now with, regulating its chips and so on and so forth. So I think, what we hope to unravel in this conversation is that really delicate balance between pushing the bounds forward, but also being very cautious of the compliance.
Andrew?
Just to add on to the point, I think it's very hard to innovate and also be compliant at the same time, but coming from, I work at Microsoft Federal and lead the security strategy for two big organizations. I don't think that we have a choice. I don't think we have a choice to innovate now and be compliant later. One of the things that we're doing, which kind of feeds into the joke that the federal government is so slow, is that we're building environments, we're building classified clouds, and making sure that they're compliant from day zero, and not as an afterthought. I used to do incident response as well at Microsoft, and one of the things that we've seen is that threat actors are using artificial intelligence to do reconnaissance and map out a customer's environment in seconds or minutes or even days. And so we used to think that, well, there's a threat actor in your environment, they've been there for 6, 12, 18 months. The reason that we used to say that was because threat actors are collecting telemetry, they're collecting information, they're mapping out how your organization works, which takes time before they can plan the perfect attack. And what we've seen recently is they don't need 18 months. They just need high privileges and access, and they need maybe 2 or 3 days. So yes, innovation does happen way faster than compliance, but we're at a point now where they need to happen in parallel.
But isn't the human being the point of where the risk is always going to be at, even with all the training and all the tools? We're always going to fall back to the human being. Quick story. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the UN General Assembly, and highly secure environment. It's every 3 naming agency is there. Between 46th and 3rd, you get your access pass, and then you make your way through to the UN towards the water, and you probably stop at maybe 15 points where someone's checking your ID. The second day, they made a mistake with my ID, and I only got a general administration pass, so I couldn't navigate.
This is the UN Assembly, right?
This is the UN Assembly. I couldn't navigate through where I wanted to go through, so I waited until I saw someone I knew that was a part of the group, and I asked if I can use this pass, and I did, and I grabbed this pass, and on the pass, it didn't have any names, it just said, must be accompanied by UN ID. So we both thought, there's no chance, and I said, well, let me give it a shot, let me see if I can walk my way through. Well, I proceeded to go to almost every area that I needed to go to. No one actually looked at they just looked at my ID, they looked at the pass, and then let me go through, no matter how much they were trained.
So they looked at your pass?
They looked at it.
But they didn't read it?
They didn't read it.
I went through the terms of condition. Everybody clicks yes without reading, sorry.
Yeah, they didn't read it. And then at one point, I had gone in and gone out, and one of the guards actually stopped me and said, well, you can't use this ID, so you have to exit. And I said, I've already been inside. Do you think I pose a threat? I was wearing the suit. And they said no, and he let me in. And so it's always going to be the human being, isn't it? Isn't that the argument now?
Yes. I don't know if you read it. It was in the news. New York police has arrested a gang. They found SIM farming. They were targeting all the politicians who were there. And now this story. Isn't it interesting? And you think UN is giving the top
most
security?
secure. Yeah, and it is, and it's the most secure area. You don't feel risk at all.
You wear a suit.
But threat actors can wear
I think
suits.
it's fair, right?
Yes.
Talking about suit.
I was impersonating a smart person.
Talking about laws. When AI break the law, who's responsible? Let's say it's Copilot. Is it Microsoft? Is it M-Theory because you're using it?
I think it's the organization
or
that's
is
implementing.
it the person who's prompting and asking AI to do the illegal stuff?
If it's a part of an organization, I think the responsibility falls onto the organization that the employee works for or serves. The tools are there for us to manipulate. Let's say earlier we were talking about on stage. We were talking about Entra ID, Azure AD. Out of the box, Azure AD doesn't do anything. It's a complete open door. And unless you spend about 100 hours of configuration time to configure it adequately for baseline security, it's still an open door. So the responsibility has to fall on not Microsoft, whoever's utilizing Entra ID. The tool's there to be used properly.
So then in that case, what if we fine tune a model, right? We take DeepSeek or something out of the box, we do all of our guardrails, deep learning, whatever on it, and then we deploy it.
Yes.
Is that M-Theory's responsibility at that point? Is that the initial designer of the model, their architecture? I think at one point, this blame has to be distributed in some regard.
I would agree. I think it's a stacked accountability model, right? There is some burden of accountability on the group or the individual or the team that deploys that artificial intelligence. Where do they deploy it to? What access are you giving it? What is the intent of that model? Then there's also some responsibility on who actually created the model in the first place, whether it's Microsoft or X or Google or all the litany of organizations that are building these models out. And I think there's also responsibility on the user themselves. If you deploy an LLM to my workspace and I'm able to infiltrate, brute force, inject some type of poisoning to that model and get access to data that I'm not supposed to have, I think I do bear some responsibility for violating the terms of use of that model, whether those terms of use are from my own organization or from the manufacturer of that model.
Yeah, I would add, I said recovering data scientist because I came from Microsoft as well as a data scientist. And I would say that the biggest thing on a data scientist when we talk about breaking the law and that kind of stuff is the ethical nature of having explainers, whether it be SHAP or LIME or anything like that, which tells exactly to the end user, here's how your model decided its decision, its output, the labeling. And if you don't include that, then I would say the data scientist is definitely askew and probably has some liability on that part. But outside of that, the only thing I would worry about if I were a financial institution or a security firm is kind of the same thing. Am I releasing information or sharing information or making a decision based on something that may violate federal law?
I push back on the panel a little bit because AI is being built while being utilized, and even the makers of AI or the various AIs, they still don't know where this is evolving to. None of us do. So the responsibility should still be to the fault or the responsibility of the organization that's implementing it, regardless if it's been vetted, not vetted. It's like the old adage, you don't get fired for IBM even if it crashes because you made the right choice. Well, kind of similarly, you can't take this similarly. In this case, this is existential, the utilization of AI. And it could be as simple as, we're talking about data governance. It could be as simple as, the Fortune 500 companies, CEOs, personal, wealth information that's stored somewhere is now accessible through a query on, Copilot.
Yeah, I think when we talk about that kind of stuff, especially if we're doing it for something like a SOC, and we're using AI to help make decisions, close tickets, maybe lock accounts and that kind of stuff, if it creates a financial burden on the company that they've got an SLA with you, then I think you've got to do some due diligence, right? It's just out of the box. But a lot of the AI projects that I think we referred to in an article at one time was 95% of AI implementations have failed. And we're talking $30 to $50 billion in the last couple years that are being invested. It's supposed to go up to around $80 billion in the next year or two. So the ones that have had the most success are not financial institutions, surprisingly. It's been more around, trying to remember, it wasn't education, but it was pretty close. But technology has had hit or miss on the implementation of AI. And I think it's really, because again, it gets down to what the compliance issues are, what the work process is, the standard operating procedure for the business line, and making sure that you document it and that you carry over that into the code as well. So what problem are you trying to solve always has to be the question, right? That's the first thing that has to be answered.
Yes, but solving the problem, let's say you can put your entire IP in Azure or AWS by mistake, and now causes the problem. Why I push back and say it's a responsibility of the organization. Regardless of the tool being used, you still have very critical, let's say, data points that you have to protect, regardless if the tool is faulty or not, right? Absolutely. So anyway.
One of the things we've been looking at really inside of our data center is actually hosting customer data just for that. Because we do have bleeding that happens, just like when we talk about hallucinations from AI. AI will sometimes hallucinate. If you take a term like Microsoft Fabric and then Server Fabric, which are two Microsoft products, and you query it about Fabric, it's going to give you probably a blend of both. So it hallucinates and it confuses the two.
Oh, yeah.
The same thing can be said when we start querying, just like you said, using an open AI model, Grok, be it Copilot, any of them. When you train your data in that cloud, there's going to be bleed over that's going to happen. So you're going to potentially have intellectual capital, intellectual property that gets into that next model, even the RAG model that's being used by somebody else. So what we say is bring it into the data center, keep it there, don't pay the token fee, you take it with you when you go, or you leave it in here, we just host it. Give you a much better time being able to retrain your own models. We can measure the data drift remotely for you, or you can measure it remotely just like a colo. And I think that's something where when we talk about MSSPs and how we can leverage what people don't have today, we don't need to compete against the cloud when we can actually have a pod that's local to us that gives it to the customers that have all their business built around that intellectual property. It could be tear sheets, it could be anything that they're working on, whether it be an RLS model or just census curated data over time.
You brought another question to my mind. The AI is good as the data.
Yep.
So you talked about what if you use public AI and you use your company IPs and AI and it goes away. So what do you do to protect the data from getting out to the public? Or
You don't put it there.
you didn't hear that. It was a good one.
Go ahead.
Well, I think single-handedly, the biggest issue is companies that aren't setting an AI policy in the first place, right? They're not saying, hey, here is how we want our employees using AI. You know, and you especially see that in the small to medium-sized companies where, you know, Andrew has a preference for Gemini and James doesn't want to pay for Plus, so he's using a free account that actually is sending telemetry
And
back.
nothing is for free, right?
So on and so forth, exactly. So I think not setting that agenda in the first place is the biggest issue, and then you can go down the line of, you know, is this in a compliant industry? Do we need to, you know, are we in the finance or healthcare where we really need to abide by certain regulations, or is something like, you know, an enterprise grade account on one of the big cloud providers kind of sufficient for that?
This conversation was brought to the forefront in 2023 when about 6 months after OpenAI launched ChatGPT 3 at the time. Mira Murati, the then CTO of OpenAI, was being interviewed, and I think everybody in this room probably heard it, where the interviewee asked where they're getting their training information from, or their data from. Was it YouTube? Was it YouTube training data? And she intentionally fumbled the response. It was an obvious lie. But she made it feel like that data is, you know, we're not tapping into, you know, private company data, but they are. And so much like what Ross just said, a lot of our employees, you know, on their own want to launch free AI services to, you know, research, you know, football games, et cetera, at work and company time. So all those things have to be considered, and hence always the responsibility has to go and fall down to the employer and the organization.
James, how do you, when you are a data scientist like Ross as well,
Recovering.
you know, what do you do to ensure that I'm using theory? So what do you do to protect my data that your other customers will not get my data?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a lot of different security protocols that are within the data center itself. You know, cages, racks, secure rooms. We even have a SCIF. We even have a SCIF that allows for secure access. But it's really just controls, right? Very solid controls, just like he was talking about at the UN. They have to be in place now.
They have controls in UN, but
Sure,
he was able to bypass
Well, they
them.
didn't have Marines there. So you got to have the Marines that are checking the IDs because they will not let you in. I assure you that. So.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Ross.
I was just going to say the other thing I would add there is just general AI literacy, right? And so I saw this tweet this morning, and it said, for all those companies out there that have vibe coders working for you, you might want to go check your repositories because you are just exposing ChatGPT keys hard-coded in the code base because now you have people that don't have a coding background that are now writing code. So I think those broad initiatives need to be kind of instilled within these environments as well.
Can I add?
Sure.
Actually, it needs to go down to fundamentals, I would say, before one person can use ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini. Fundamentals around zero trust, especially around identity and device. So we have to start there. So if they're Microsoft 365 users or Google Workspace users, before the identity is locked down to baseline configurations and all the policies of the device, all the MFA controls, which we're talking about. You know, a lot of people implement MFA for insurance, but they're not enforced. They're just enabled. That's pretty much most people when we touch their MFA stacks. So I guess fundamentals back down to zero trust. You start there, then you guys can start implementing AI.
You want to add something else?
No.
All right. So, all right, I'm going back to where I belong. When I talked about AI, ma'am, do you think AI is going to take our jobs away?
I think it's going to enhance it.
We all have this question in mind, right? Is AI going to take my job away, or is it going to create new opportunities? What do you think?
I agree. I think it depends on how you leverage it.
And how? Sir, any opinions?
I think it's up to the people and how they decide to utilize it.
Remember when the first press came 500 years ago? Many people lost jobs. Then when cloud came in, many people lost jobs, but it's created lots of opportunities. As a business owner, as a CIO, developer, as a Microsoft employee, and as a data scientist, what is your opinion on this?
I'll go. So my opinion.
All right.
So I'm an educator too, and my biggest opinion about this is when we were doing Azure, when we first implemented Azure to the market, a lot of people, especially DBAs, when we started doing Azure SQL, they were really apprehensive about using it. And me being a DBA for a decade at a startup, I was pretty much in the same boat for about 2 weeks, and I used it. And I went to the customers and I explained it to them. We're not here to replace the DBA. We're here to actually make sure that you're not reading log files for the next half day, writing a report that goes to somebody that nobody ever reads. You're not going through making sure your backups were successful or not. You get an alert now. So what it did was it made the DBA actually a DBA, focusing on optimization, making sure that the database was optimally tuned and running at its peak performance. Tuning queries became even easier. And then also they kind of encouraged like transparent data encryption, which is encryption at rest on the database level. So before they enforced it and made it as mandatory, they tried it out for a year and told people we would encourage you strongly. And then when you created a new database, all of a sudden TDE was enabled and couldn't be disabled. It was just by default because the impact was about 2 to 3% of the performance. So that's the kind of perspective I take. It should be an augmentation tool for sure.
So totally agree with that. I think that AI doesn't remove the need for people, it removes the need for repetition. And I think those that are using artificial intelligence can become faster, more efficient, more accurate with their day-to-day jobs. But there is a significant burden on the organization that's allowing their employees to use AI to be more efficient, to be more streamlined. to help them reprioritize the extra time that they have into learning additional new skills. And so if I'm a 40-hour per week employee, and because of AI, now I'm only working 30 hours a week, my boss, my organization, my employer, they should be asking themselves, what do I do with those extra 10 hours? Am I allowed to think strategically? Am I allowed to help push the business forward or think about security strategy 6 or 12 months down the road? Because those are tasks that AI can't do without someone being involved in that equation.
So, take a sound.
So to that point, do you think everything a human could do at some point, not right now technologically, but at some point in the future, could be replicated by AI? Everything a human could do.
Any humanoid, maybe. Any humanoid robot,
Right.
maybe the combination of those two. Eventually, yes, but I mean, you have to think about the innovation boom that's about to happen. I mean, when SpaceX started launching rockets, today we have, I think, about 20 in-space manufacturers called ISMs. I think they employ something like 3,500 to 4,000 workers that are extremely high paid in something called in-space manufacturing, which didn't exist a decade ago. So I think you're going to see that proliferate across the ecosystem. All of a sudden, some AI is going to figure out an underwater manufacturing system that's more appropriate for building engines or something, and that process will start, and all of a sudden 50 companies will migrate towards that. So I think we're about to see a boom, if anything at all.
Chant, you said something about information as well, which I think is really important that a lot of people don't talk about as well, is that we're really on the cusp of this information renaissance. And I think that needs to be leaned into with how we can process and digest mass amounts of information at scale now. The last point I'll make is there was, the Wall Street Journal released an article, I think yesterday or the day before, and they kind of did an analysis within companies and looked at employees who have really embraced AI, right? And they found what's actually happening is this huge diaspora in terms of productivity and efficiency, right? The high-performing employees are even more high-performing and more efficient. The low-performing employees are still the same, right? So I think that's what we'll continue to see as well in the near term.
But there is one thing for sure, Microsoft, Google, Meta, they replace around 30% of their workplace with AI already. So AI is cutting job. It's a reality. But AI is going to help us to be more efficient, as you all agreed. And AI, like, let's talk from cybersecurity point of. I could be a SOC analyst who had a bad day. I fired my partner. On the way to work, I had an accident. I'm working this week at a night shift, and I'm very sleepy. I can miss that one little signal, which can cost millions and millions of dollars, where AI can step in and make my life better. But AI is like a two-sided sword. There is a good part and bad part, and as usual, as in everything, we're going to face this going forward. Talking about that, now, you also mentioned it during the panel discussion. It's easier to talk like this, sorry. You also mentioned during panel discussion that, hey, you know what? We used to build things, then break it, then create regulations. That was the motto. What is the new motto with AI? Speed, compliance. Where are we standing? How is this going to help us?
I think it's a continuous compliance check, right? And when we think about audits, we think about the thing that we hate doing once a year or once every 6 months. And I think that where we're seeing the federal government, move to, because that's where I work, is we're doing continuous compliance checks. We're building code and making sure that it's compliance. It's following zero trust controls, and we're not building a plane as we fly it anymore. Well, maybe we still are, but we're getting better. And so I think where organizations need to go is thinking about compliance, and maybe it's as simple as having the security team and the compliance team in the same room together working hand in hand, instead of having the security team develop, build, ship a product, and then the audit comes a year later.
Develop, build, ship with security in mind.
I also think the old Silicon Valley paradigm just needs to die, right? I know Chant will disagree here, but the move fast and break things is not working. It's, in my opinion, move fast and build things. Let's create tangible value as opposed to breaking the entire system.
Yeah, I would just add, we can't forget the fundamentals. If we have a SOC team that's got new members in it and we have low level, we can categorize it with AI, we can assign those lower level tickets to new members to get them up to speed on how to handle it, follow the workflow that goes along with it, and train the next generation of people that are going to be the actual thinkers and doers 20 years from now. But it's still leveraged as a training tool as well, and it can identify who's better at certain things. That was some of the first work I did when we reshaped and started doing natural language processing, was analyzed doctors' notes that were coming in, transcribed, and we could identify which transcriptionists were more accurate on certain types of forms and where there were training issues. Same thing holds true for IT jobs. Any type of security job, if something's getting through, then we have an opportunity to actually teach everybody else on how to do it properly. But we have to have the fundamentals in place still. Those don't go away, ever.
So we're still going to learn the hard way.
Iterate, iterate, iterate.
Yeah.
All right. Looking ahead, what is the single biggest risk we are not talking about enough when it comes to balancing AI speed and safety? You, as a business owner, want to make some money while protecting your customers. You, as a data scientist, you want to build something to ensure that it's productive, it helps to solve problems. You, as a security advisor, you have to ensure that the product that you're advising is not going to come bite you in your back. Or you, as a data scientist, all of the above, right? So putting this in mind, I want your answers, please.
What is the biggest risk?
Yes, from the business owner perspective,
I think one of the big risks
who looks after Fortune companies.
So I think, and this talk was inspired by the MIT article that James was referring to earlier. 95% of all pilot projects have failed, and to produce an ROI. So we have to start with that. I think my approach would be to identify the smallest, easiest, lowest hanging fruit, ankle biters of things you can automate and start there. Knock out improvements of performance across various departments, and it's baby steps. Again, I go back to the fundamentals, or what James was just saying is, you have to start with zero trust. That has to happen because literally we're going to be putting information out in the sphere, in the vortex, if you will, without knowing who's seeing it. And your low-level employee and your senior executives are going to do it. Both are going to make the same mistake.
James?
So I believe in fail-fast culture, growth mindset, of course. But what I would say is that one of the biggest things to me when it comes to the biggest challenges or dangers is that in every AI project I've worked on, any project I've worked on, whether it be in security, whether it be in data, is that you have to have a few key elements. One, they have to have budget. They have to have an executive sponsor that has skin in the game of it, and you have to have a business problem to solve. If you don't have a business problem to solve, you're going to spin your wheels, you're going to spend your money, and you're going to end up in this 95% MIT study, right? So you have to be able to define scope, and you have to have people that are held accountable for that scope, and they have to have budget to do it. So
the challenge is, but the challenge is, the audience is hearing, the audience in the world is hearing AI or die. Your business is dead if you don't adopt this somehow. And they know their competition will adopt it or potentially adopt it. So everybody's like running to this new, euphoric place that you can achieve eventually, but no plans to get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that goes back. I would say that the cycle times in an AI project can go down. Agile Scrum is widely used in what we do. It's a very easy, effective process, daily stand-ups, that kind of thing. But what we find is that we fail much faster on scope and spec. But in the last project that I've been working on, we really, we had a business process that was defined. It was wrong. The AI that we were building, the machine learning, the data engineering we were doing identified every problem. And as data engineers, we naturally document everything that we do. In fact, we write reports typically that do all of our orchestration for us. So if our orchestration failed, we'll tell ourselves exactly why it failed. So when we do that, we can help them refine their business processes, and it speeds up the entire process. And of course, I brought in some new data engineers that we're using AI to leverage it. You have to be very cautious about how much they do, because if they don't understand the fundamentals of it, then it's a problem.
So, I don't know if you noticed one thing. He built a tool who helps him to be even better. So your own tool is making you to be better, right? Is this what I understood? So your tool is going to help you to...
Yeah. So,
all right. He's shy.
So I'll go a little, I think, more philosophical, right? I think generally speaking, the threat of AI is some form of superintelligence. I think, when Sam Altman was recently interviewed and he was in front of a panel, he said, one of my greatest worries is if ChatGPT 7 becomes president, and the whole audience laughed. And he said, no, here's what I actually mean, right? It's not that it'll become president, it's that whoever's in the executive office at that point will be so heavily relying on it for all of their decision making that it might as well be in office. And I think that's my biggest fear is we take the human out of the loop. We continue to rely on these tools more and more to the point where AI technical debt is becoming a real thing, right? We're seeing companies' code bases become more inefficient because developers are just committing without looking at what's being written, to your point, James. We need the best brains to come together within a company and use these tools at their disposal, but remember that we are the humans in the loop here.
Yeah, but I think that risk gets thwarted by the fact that there's not one AI player that will win the race, right? There's like at least 7 in the United States that theoretically will win one vertical or other that they'll dominate in. And the threat actors, if world dominance is going to be controlled by AI, that AI has got to spend $100 billion a year, that threat actor, whoever that threat actor is. And today, from the likes of it, it seems to be falling in the United States' hands, the power and the lead that obviously can be displaced any time. And so we have to be diligent about that. But I think that risk, I'm not saying it's not a risk, but at least I sleep better at night knowing there's not one winner. There's potentially never one winner in this race. So
I totally agree. Andrew, let's change the scope of the question. AI means, you saw it in the previous presentations, also a cyber risk. There is every day a brand new virus created by AI. The voice capturing, the phishing, the vishing. You work as a cybersecurity advisor for the government. How do you convince the government on getting into this?
I think the biggest thing, working with federal government and trying to deploy artificial intelligence to have real metrics for success is, what is AI supposed to do for you? How is it supposed to save, your budget? How is it supposed to save employee time? The era of Doge over the last 6 to 8 months really kind of brought to the surface level how much waste there is in government spending. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
11,000 unused Adobe licenses?
That one.
11,000 unused Adobe licenses. Never logged into.
And I think that, Doge kind of came in hand with this idea of AI to make things more streamlined, to make things more efficient. Are you using 17 different security products that all do the same thing? Do you have a team full of security engineers that you're spending a lot of money for, but they're doing low-level tasks that can be automated? And so I think the biggest challenge is, every conference talks about everyone needs AI, but when we're actually going to deploy it, is how does this AI save us money? How does it save us time? And what are the real metrics for success that we're going to get in our organization? And it's not necessarily, organization-wide. Sometimes we have to break it up by the different departments. Is the SOC team, the incident response team, and then we go over to the business development side. And there's different use cases for every single team. It's hard, it's challenging, it takes a lot of time, but I think that's the only way to successfully deploy AI is to break it down in its most fundamental use case.
And just to that point, I forget the gentleman's name on the last panel, but he said something along the lines of being very clear what we mean by AI as well, right? I think we're often just throwing this around as a one word that fits everything, and remembering where the origin started, as we saw with the previous presentation as well, and really going down that. Yeah.
So how are the gentlemen doing? Good, bad? All right, they pretend smart, right? Let's see if they're really smart. Who is not using AI in the room yet? And why? And how they can convince you? Short. Otherwise, I will take the microphone.
I haven't used it yet just because I've seen a lot of stories about how AI is not there yet.
Skynet.
More so that, like, if I ask, so how many rocks am I supposed to eat in a day, it'll give me an answer. I think on Google AI the first week was like, oh, you're supposed to eat 27 rocks a day. And I just don't know that the AI models are ready yet.
So remember my question? Poisoned AI.
No, I mean, it's like going to a marine and ask him how many rocks a day you'll eat. He'll tell you the same thing. As many as you need to, as many as you can fit in your belly, it doesn't matter. It depends on which AI you're using it for. Again, it should be a tool balanced with knowledge, right? It's if you're wanting to teach your children how to read, it's probably not the best tool. Your child developmentally at 5 years of age can't even draw a triangle. They can draw straight lines. So you can't teach a developmentally under 5-year-old child how to do the alphabet because they can't even draw it. So it makes no sense. The same as with AI. You don't want to put a cell phone in the hands of a kid. And if you go to Silicon Valley and a lot of those places, they don't send their kids to school. They don't have phones. They don't have a lot of tech gadgets. They learn abacuses. They learn basic tools. And that's knowledge is power.
But what he said there is kind of a good argument as to why AI won't take jobs, right? Today, at least today, we need to validate the results, all of us, across the board. Every result AI produces today has to be validated by some person of responsible party that ensures that the company doesn't fail.
You want to add? Otherwise, I'm going to give one more time to them.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. You know, it is still true model science that we're doing, especially at the production level when we're talking about agentic deployments and a lot of these kind of chat-like features that we're rolling out. There is a validation set. You are kind of looking at your accuracy levels and developing a schema for that. So
yeah. So a lot of people aren't aware, but like. Microsoft developed products called a suite of tools that was really called Cognitive Services. And what's really unique about it is that they did the speech, they did the expressions years ago. They could translate in 3 languages in real time. And what I would say is one thing I'm looking for, like for support desk and that kind of stuff, is literally to have an AI bot that intervenes on behalf of 90% of calls. And then when they hear certain stop words, that come up into the conversation, it immediately switches channels to a real agent. That kind of technology has existed for several years, and it allows escalation to occur when it needs to, and you keep a happy customer. So that's what I would do.
I think to your question, any type of artificial intelligence or AI or machine learning that you're using on the SOC or the security side for your customers, anyone from your organization that's aligned to that customer contract should be able to speak effectively or intelligently about that, right? So if you're sending them a PowerPoint, a bi-weekly SOC report, and it's got all those annoying ChatGPT emojis in it, maybe don't do that. And so that's right. And so that's kind of a rule for my team is that, if we're using AI to generate reports or if we're using it to generate prompts, you still need to be able to understand all that. The only thing AI should be used is to save you time, make you more efficient, but not supplement your knowledge base. If AI is smarter than you, then maybe there's a different job out there.
But to the question, Andrew says this a lot when he's given us advice and guidance, and we have a 5-year, now 6-year SOC team who does have broken processes that we're trying to improve all the time and get better and better.
Millions of people that your SOC team
Supports.
is managing,
Yeah.
supports.
Nation-
More than 2 million
globally.
that I know.
Yeah, globally, we're supporting a lot. But Andrew says, and I think I agree with him, from the SOC relationship to the customer, we don't want to know who you guys are. We don't want to know what the SOC thinks or not thinks. We just want to know they're protecting us at all times and only surfacing noise when it's relevant. And even then, it shouldn't reach the organization. It should be handled, whether through automation and through IT or whatever mechanism. And you want the security advisor having the relationship with the customer, not the SOC team. And I think I tend to agree. I had the opposite feeling, actually, until Andrew kind of pointed me in the right direction, I guess, or the different direction. I always wanted high touch from every department, but then it becomes almost redundant because now there's the sensitivity level that we're supposed to be blocking through automation, we're enhancing through human interaction as a result of that. So I think the real answer is down to zero or near zero where possible, and let strategy and advisory and road mapping and assessments be the relationship guide, you know?
Ross, Andrew, James, Chant, you're wonderful. I really appreciate all your answers.